Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Tuesday morning edition of Sidelines. A lot to talk about today. Big day, man. Got a great show lineup. Mitch Davis, the MitchDavisShow.com will check in from Tupelo here shortly, followed by Doug Dean, AU Dose down in Birmingham. There's movement in the aisles in the recruiting wars. He's going to tell us all about that. Lots of things happening in the college football recruiting world. It's summertime, and it never stops, I can promise you. At media days, that was a big theme of, is there any time off for the coaches? And, you know, no, there's really not. And if they can't call, they get burner phones probably. But recruiting is in gear right now, and it is on fire everywhere. All right, hour number 2. Man, really cool guest. Eddie Robinson, legendary football coach at Grambling. I met his grandson in Birmingham up at the club up on the mountain at the Nick Saban Legacy Award dinner. And he was there with his dad and their family to receive the award along with Steve Spurrier, the Nick Saban Legacy Award last year in Birmingham. And Eddie Robinson III will be checking in with us, talk about his grandfather's legacy in college football, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. We'll also talk with Rodney Orr, Tider Insider. We'll check in the final segment here on this Tuesday. Hey, 6 days a week, 25 shows a month, 50 hours a month. That's over 600 hours a year. College football, basketball, baseball, recruiting. Free speech is alive and well. We are protected by the First Amendment. A lot of people in the ground who have fought for that right. We don't back down. We don't take crap off anybody. We speak our minds. We have the best guests out there. We're blessed by God to live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Do yourself a favor. Junk in your head, junk out. Positive in, positive out. Only hang around people and ask people. Don't worry about what people say about you unless they're the people that you would seek advice from. Because if you wouldn't seek advice from them, who cares what they say? Mitch Davis, you've been bouncing off the walls. Red Bull. Lane Kiffin the other day accused me when I asked him a question. He said, wow, man, that's a lot. That's a lot going on there. He goes, I go, well, that's a lot of coffee. And he goes, no, man, that's Red Bull. So people calling me Red Bull. Mitch, I'm not wound up. You've been in the studio with me. Ah! How are you this morning?
Rob, good to be on. Good to see you. Good questions from you at SEC Media Days. I'm doing well. About to settle in here at the home office, do a little work. Got Bill Curry coming on at 9 o'clock.
I know. Tell people about that. That's a great one.
Rob, I appreciate it. So, Coach Bill Curry, I have his biography right here on my phone and all the questions that I'm going to ask him. Played under Bobby Dodd and coached at Alabama and coached at Georgia Tech and at Kentucky, won the Peach Bowl for the Wildcats back in 1993, Sugar Bowl champion, Super Bowl champion for the Green Bay Packers, coached and mentored under Vince Lombardi and Bobby Dodd and various Don Shula and all these great name coaches in football, and really excited about talking to him about not only his career in football and where college football is going in the future, but also his faith. He's a man of faith, and I really can't wait to kind of deep dive into that with him a little bit and how he's used his faith and his career and his platform to reach others for the gospel. And I think that it's going to be a very fun interview, and I'm very excited. Coach Bill Curry, as a Kentucky fan, means so much to my father and my family and what he did for that program, and not only for that program, but for Southeastern Conference football and at Georgia State. Really is just a remarkable man, and I'm just so excited to talk football and also to talk about his faith. And like I said, just to really talk about how he uses his platform for the glory of God and really use that platform to reach others. And I think that that's something that a lot of people are going to be able to take away from the interview is try to use your platform for the greater good. And that's what we're all called here to do.
Yeah. And no question. I mean, Bill Curry, cool life. His dad, it was really neat years ago when the Alabama game was taken out of Birmingham and moved to Auburn, December 2nd of 89. When I was working at Channel 3 in Columbus, Reese Davis and Roger Manus went over there and met with Bill Curry's dad. At that time, I think he was in his mid-60s. benching maybe, I'm not kidding you, 375, 400 pounds. I think he worked at Diversified Products Incorporated, DPI there in Opelika. And a friend of mine who played at Auburn, Curry lived either across the street or next door to him up in Atlanta. And this guy, his father, Larry Morris, you can ask Bill Curry, I mean, but Larry Morris was an All-American linebacker at Georgia Tech. And then he played and was all-pro with George Halas and the Chicago Bears. Georgia Tech legacy, that's what Bill Curry is most closely associated with. Went to Alabama. You know, he didn't beat Auburn and didn't work out well, but he still goes back to Tuscaloosa, goes to Kentucky, and he gets that program going at Georgia State. Mitch, that's the kind of stuff I love reading about, because a lot of people, and also he stands by his faith. You don't back down. You know, a lot of people, you making yourself, you know, smaller to make other people around you feel less uncomfortable is a disservice to everybody. Good for him for being a shining path.
And, you know, Rob, I think what people get kind of lost have been, especially as we approach the kickoff of the 2023 season, is all the talking season and all the depth chart stuff. But I think it's also important, I think you do too, is it's also important to interview those guys who laid the groundwork for us to enjoy the modern game of college football. I mean, this guy has put in over 60 years of work in college football, whether it be as a coach or whether it be as a broadcaster, philanthropist, these so many different things that Bill Curry has done. And, you know, I think that it's important to take a step back from the everyday grind of college football and really just appreciate the history and how far we come as a game.
Well, college football is the greatest game. It pulls people together. And again, we're going to have Eddie Robinson III on at the top of hour number 2. And, you know, Bill Curry and all these coaches, you know, people have their opinions about coaches. You know, he's a man's man. He played for Vince Lombardi and the Packers too. And I got somebody here listening right now down in Birmingham. He said, hey, man, that's going to be it's going to be incredible. And I want to hear that. So he goes, how can I go about hearing it? And he said, also tell Mitch, he said, ask Bill Curry to tell the story of when his girlfriend bragged she's never made a B. And he replied, he had not either. You know, so anyway, how can people hear that interview that you're doing with Coach Bill Curry?
Absolutely. So I think I'm going to put it up there on Friday. I'm going to do the interview today. I normally put out podcasts on Thursday, Friday. So it's probably going to be Friday. I'm going to post it not only on themitchdavisshow.com. I'm going to be writing an article about it, but also on YouTube at The Mitch Davis Show. And potentially by Friday, we're trying to get back into Apple, Spotify, and all these different things. Lost it when COVID hit because something – somehow, some way I got shadow banned there. But hopefully it'll be back on Apple and all that. But if not, it's on YouTube, The Mitch Davis Show, and then also themitchdavisshow.com. Going to be both places. And of course, it'll be on Twitter. This is a very high encouragement for that person to be following me on Twitter, MitchDavis_8. Of course, there'll be a lot of Mississippi State, a lot of Ole Miss games this fall. So should be a lot of fun. And I'm just so excited, and it's always an honor just to come on here and talk college football, talk college athletics with you, Rob.
Well, it is a lot of fun, and I'm proud of you for busting your ass and getting these interviews. You know, a lot of these young journalists are lazy, okay? You and I are constantly going back and forth. I mean, I'm horrible. I miss more weddings than I think anybody. I'm so myopic into this stuff, what we do, and my financial advisory practice, and man, I love hearing from these people. Okay. Bill Curry, where's he been? What's he doing? You know, he is college football. I mean, he's an alpha male, you know, his opinions are different and all. I got mad at him when he was at Alabama. He got in a little bit of a rift with Coach Dye, but that's part of it. You know, Jimbo Fisher was asked at SEC Media Days last week, you know, the usual questions. And one of them was, what about you and Bobby Petrino? Heated discussions and blah, blah, blah. And Jimbo said, hold on a second. He goes, have you ever known of a football staff where there ain't a bunch of heated discussions? Come on, man. He goes, let's be honest about that. Mitch, ask Bill Curry about Larry Morris at Georgia Tech and ask him about a player from Riverwood up there in Sandy Springs that I knew at Auburn, Shan Morris. I know he wanted Shan to go to Georgia Tech. Shan was a hell of a player, tough as nails, safety at Auburn. And his senior year, he was one of the top players on the number 1 ranked defense in the country. Bill Curry is a living legend with a lot of great stories. And that's going to be, again, what you think Friday you'll drop it on the MitchDavisShow.com?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Friday. The more I look at the week and look out, because I'm going to be actually covering the Sun Belt Media Days from afar, like I was with the Southeastern Conference. And so,
yeah,
between covering the Sun Belt Media Day and covering, a little bit of what's going on down there, and putting out content about Arkansas State, Southern Miss, South Alabama, App State, Marshall, between doing all that and then also getting prepared for the Bill Curry drop, it's probably going to be Friday before I can get around to it. But that's the thing, Rob, and we can kind of transition into this. I was on Twitter, 5 minutes before I came on, and I was, getting ready for the day, and I saw tweets from the Sun Belt Media Days. And I'd like to just say that the Sun Belt and the Southeastern Conference, the correlation between the two, obviously the Sun Belt doesn't have the national championships that the SEC does, but the pedigree and the product that the Sun Belt presents out there is equally as amazing as the Southeastern Conference on a much smaller scale. But you look at their media day setup, everything looks the same as it did in Nashville last week.
Well, look, Sun Belt in a lot of years, in the last 5 years, you could argue is better than the Pac-12 in being in a Power 5 group. We had Mr. Bill Hancock on the show last Wednesday, and Will Gunter, who's on 107.5 The Game in Columbia, South Carolina, was on with us. And we were talking about going from 4 to 12 teams in the playoff. Really funny when Bill Hancock said, the top 6 conferences and then 6 at large. And Bill goes, are you breaking news? We got something new here. He goes, it's the 6 highest ranked conference champions. That's what it's going to be. I love this. It gives every conference in America a chance. And what is the most valuable thing you can give is hope.
Well, and I think what's so awesome, and I had Bill Hancock on the week before SEC Media Days, and he was talking about the same thing. And, he said that a lot of those smaller towns, if you go to Appalachia, if you go to Huntington, West Virginia, and go see where Marshall is, and you go to Jonesboro, these little towns care about college football. I mean, the whole town of Jonesboro, Rob, you and I went last year, 2 years ago when Memphis played there. The whole town of Jonesboro shuts down when Arkansas State football is playing a home game. There's 40, 50,000 people in the stadium, and the same thing goes across at South Alabama. I know people that come up from Dolphin Island and come up from Gulf Shores and Orange Beach to go watch South Alabama play because they have a very good product. And Coach Womack, Kane Womack, is really putting together a good team down there at South Alabama. Southern Miss, Coach Will Hall, he's recruiting the state of Mississippi very well. He's getting guys that are overlooked by Ole Miss and Mississippi State to stay in. He's recruiting to JUCO. I went to just about every Northwest game last year because I love JUCO football down here in the SIP. And Southern Miss had a representative at each one of those games, highly recruiting every guy that came through there, whether it be a East Mississippi guy or whether it be a Northwest guy. And, for a lot of those guys, they don't have the grades to go to an SEC school. So they go to a Southern Miss, they go to a South Alabama, and they really make a name for themselves. I know Frank Gore's son, Frank Gore Jr., he's the starting running back for Southern Miss right now. And it's just a good product of football out there.
Well, Northwest down in Senatobia, the 5-star city, and my friend and sponsor of the show, Alan Calicott, Calicott Insurance Agency there in Senatobia. That's where Northwest Community College is. And that's a big deal. Bobby Joe Franklin was a longtime coach there. I've been to several games down there over the years. 17 junior colleges in Mississippi. It's not Mississippi, it's Mississippi. Okay. That's how we say it up here in the Delta. If you don't say it that way, that's fine. Like I said, free speech. Mitch, I also love the fact that you're beating the pavement. Give the people an idea in the last 5 years of how many basketball, football, baseball. Just give us a conservative ballpark figure, number of games you've been to the last 5 years in person.
Really, truthfully, I haven't really done the latest total, but I know it's over 400 because this summer I've been broadcasting for Max House Sports with the Cotton States Baseball League. And that's 2 games every weekend right there. And then on top of that, when I'm not broadcasting, I'm keeping stats and running a podcast for them at the Cotton States Baseball League for every other collegiate baseball game. So we play Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So good Lord, that's that's a lot of games, Rob. I would say it's well over 400 and closer to 500. And really, it's just I've been so blessed, and I've been trying to cut back just a little bit, because I did recently get married, and it's a lot easier to watch games on the big screen television than it is to go see Mississippi State play Southeast Louisiana State or whatever. But a lot of the bigger events, a lot of the bigger games, like I'm going to be in Starkville for the Alabama game, the LSU game, the Kentucky game, a lot of the bigger events, I'm going to be there. But these Southeast Louisiana States and those games like that, I'll probably be watching on the television.
Well, yeah, you can't go to every game, but you go to a lot of them. And I go to a lot. But the thing is when you get out and you go see the stories and you talk to the people, like at media days, the narrative out there, college football's ruined, NIL's ruining it, the portal's ruining it. That's BS. And I talked to a lot of student athletes at a lot of schools in the SEC. And when you talk to them, it's just not like you think it is. And that's not just from media days. It's other cases. Yeah, there are some people who are just in it for the money, but you know what? They'll be exposed.
Yeah. And I think, Rob, a lot of the stories, underline, especially down here in the SIP, you go to any of these small towns, you come to New Albany, go to Pontotoc, go to Amory, go to any of these smaller towns, that's where you find your really interesting SEC football stories, is going to the small towns and talking to these people and talking about not only their experience with Southeastern Conference football, but also their fandom as well.
Yeah. Well, what do we say all the time on this show is that the story of college football, basketball, baseball, whatever, when you are outside the locker room, outside the stadium, that's where you see the families. And these guys, and the men and women student athletes, they bring with them a lot of people that are pulling for them. And I watched Roman Harper, and I really like him. I talked to him several times at media days. I watched him do an interview Thursday afternoon with a young reporter at WSFA TV 12 Montgomery. I've grown up watching that station, home of the Auburn Football Review. Go back to Carl Stevens. Coach Jordan would always say, "You're so right, Carl." WSFA, South Central Bell, the Auburn Football Review. This young reporter was interviewing Roman Harper. Roman's talking about SEC media days, and he was asking him about that. And, of course, he played 9 years with the Saints, won a Super Bowl, a couple of years with the Panthers, lives up in Charlotte now on SEC Network. Roman did a great job. I call him the truth broker. He always laughs. But I do. I mean, you ask him something, he's going to tell you the truth, what he thinks. And I said, I watched him do this interview, and I had a young man up there, Oakley McFerrin up there, media days from Nashville that wanted to come see the things. It was late Thursday afternoon. It was kind of breaking down. And after Roman did that great interview on Channel 12, he said, "Hold on, one more thing." He goes, "I got to say hello to everybody back in my hometown of Prattville, Alabama. Every coach, every teammate, every teacher, everybody in that town. You know who you are. Y'all are why I am what I am." He goes, "And everywhere I go, I'm a Prattville Lion for life." And I told him, I said, "Man, he goes, "Look, man, that's where I'm from." He goes, I can win a Super Bowl, whatever. You remember where you're from." And these small towns we talk about, I mean, college football, high school football, don't mess with that. Okay. It is sacred. Okay. Not in a religious term, because that's disrespectful, nor is a football game war. We hear the term battle used a lot. It's out of respect. It's like, the Braves, the Tomahawk chant. That's out of respect. That's basically the Cherokee Nation up in North Carolina and Tennessee and in the mountains in North Georgia. It's out of respect. Okay. Think about that. Don't ever forget that. Know your history.
And what's so unique about, I've witnessed this living in the SIP and kind of being around the people down here is, once you leave the big cities, once you leave your Memphises, your Nashvilles, football down here really does mean more, because these people, That's all they got. That's all they got is college football on a Saturday afternoon because Sunday through Friday, these people are working two jobs. These people are working multiple jobs, are working multiple hours. They're trying to provide for their families. But during that 2 to 3 hour time slot on the Saturday afternoon, that is when they can kind of relax. That is when they get with their families. And that to me is what the Southeastern Conference and the Sun Belt really is all about. And you see that in all these small communities. I walk around and, now that I've married into Mississippi State, Rob, I've got a couple Mississippi State maroon and white polos that have been given to me. And, I'll ring a cowbell this fall. But you walk around and you see these people wearing Mississippi State shirts and Ole Miss shirts and Southern Miss. And, we'll stop and talk to you. Like I was at a burger joint called Latham's Burger Hotel right downtown New Albany, and I was wearing a UK polo, and a guy stopped at my table, and we were talking about the rivalry between Mississippi State and Kentucky and how unique it is. And that to me is the Southeastern Conference. Yeah, we might hate each other on game days. I'm not the biggest Tennessee fan out there, but we still love each other and we still root
Yeah.
for each other. And I hear it all the time talked about. It goes back to the war. It goes back to the Civil War and having that pride in the South. As we were reconstructed and rebuilding. And I think that is really just the key for Southeastern Conference football is just that love we have for each other and love we have for the South.
Well, in the 1920s, there were a group of authors up at Vanderbilt known as the Fugitive Poets, and they wrote at great length about the shifting tides of American culture, so many people moving and leaving the small towns and the farms and going to the big cities. And Thomas Jefferson wrote a lot about the dangers of warehousing people in big cities. They'll lose their survival instincts, their independence, their culture, and they'll just be used by those in power for voting blocks. Boy, was he right. And you think about the small towns, what the Fugitive Poets wrote, Fitzgerald, Flannery O'Connor, all these great writers. And then you think about the great writers in residence at the Southern schools. People know about Willie Morris, great writer in residence at Ole Miss. Madison Jones, great Welsh writer down at Auburn, writer in residence. You need to read. You read the great, you want to know about life in the Mississippi Delta. Go watch a movie like Cat on a Hot Tin Roof with Burl Ives, Steve McQueen, Elizabeth Taylor. I mean, beautiful, great movie. But it is the culture. And you go back in 1892 when football came to the South, Mitch, that was 27 years after the war between the states had ended. The South really, in 1910, Iron Mike Donahue, a small Irishman who spoke broken English, mainly spoke Gaelic, which is the Irish language, led Auburn to the first of 3 national championships in 4 years. And then Alabama went to that Rose Bowl. They were the 4th or 5th choice. Everybody else turned it down. Alabama went. You should read the telegrams from all the schools in the South wishing Alabama well. And they took a train like 7 or 8 days out to Pasadena. They won that game 20-19. When they came back, every train station they stopped at, the bands were out there playing, thousands of people waving flags and cheering and hollering, because the South essentially had been emasculated for most of that 60 years after the war. And we latched on to football, and our agrarian roots tied right in there. And it's kind of a diametrically opposing argument that you can make. Yeah. Do we love football? Do we love the land? No, it's not an argument at all. We love it all. It is God, family, and our country. And football is part of that. But we love it down here more than anybody.
And Rob, what's so awesome about the Southeastern Conference and about really just truthfully our conference is the fact that it's a generational thing. And it's the one thing that across every socio-economical, every background, every walk of life, it doesn't matter if you're white, black, blue, yellow, all those people have their SEC football team. You go down to West Point, Mississippi, go to Columbus, Mississippi, go to Opelika, Alabama, go to Bowling Green, Kentucky, or any of those hollers back in Tennessee, Butcher Holler, where Dolly Parton's from. And all of those
And
people,
Loretta Lynn.
yeah, all those people will have the same thing. They love their SEC football program. You go to Columbus, Mississippi, who's one of the most, impoverished areas in Mississippi, especially on a lot of those back roads there. And all those people love one thing and one thing only. It's the Mississippi State Bulldogs. And they will come out to Bulldogs games. They'll come out to baseball, football games. And kids across the Southeast, they dream about putting on an orange and blue Auburn jersey or a blue and white Kentucky jersey. And that is what those kids dream of. And if they can't get to Kentucky or they can't get to Tennessee or whatever, then they dream of putting on the red and black of Arkansas State, the black and gold of Southern Miss, the red, white, and blue of South Alabama. That's what makes the South so unique. And I have to explain it to some people that, might live in Memphis, that say Memphis deserves to be in a conference like that. Kids in Memphis don't do that. Kids in Memphis aren't dreaming of going to play for Memphis State. They're dreaming of going to play for the Lakers. That's what separates when you say, hey, I belong in the SEC or you don't. Kids in Texas and Oklahoma, they grew up dreaming of playing for OU, and they grew up dreaming of playing for Texas. And even, you look across the other teams that we're looking at adding, and you look at Florida State, you look at, Clemson, those kids grow up to be dreaming of playing for Clemson, and it's just, Florida State. That's what transcends the Southeastern Conference and makes the Southeastern Conference just so freaking special. I love this conference, and it's just always such an honor to talk about this conference. And here we are, Rob. We didn't even talk about foppal today, and we're just talking about the SEC.
Well, we're rolling, man. I'm drinking coffee out of my Braves cup, and so I will say this too, and you see it and there's lots of people in Memphis that are from small towns. Memphis, is the largest small town in America. 1.2 million people in the ADI. This morning I'm over in Parkin, 30 minutes away. I've got to finish cutting the 5 acres this morning. Ran out of gas last night about 10:21 p.m. Central. But in this heat, you got to cut early or you cut at night. Thank God for the lights. And these farmers around here, by the way, during the planting season and the harvest, 1 o'clock in the morning, no big deal. They might work 18, 19 hours. They sleep in those tractors. But you know what? They're not part of the BMW culture. Bitching, moaning, and whining. We don't allow that stuff. I'll tell you what I do love. I love our listeners, people giving us great commentary. And here's some great stuff from a listener in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He said, had a professor tell him one time that most of the big cities in America were just like pig parlors. They're disease spreaders. Going, holy, it was Tommy Boy would say, holy shnikes.
Well, Rob, and I've been very vocal about this. There's reasons why I left Memphis. And Rob, I went to Memphis. I love the Tigers, and I always will love, Memphis as a whole. But take Memphis, for example. It has been ruined by generations of poor judgment and poor voting. And you see the city of Germantown. Look what Germantown's having to go through with their water crisis. Germantown, of all places, the richest town in Memphis, is having to go through a water crisis because of terrible city leadership. And really, truthfully, Rob, you might have some bad decisions here and there in small town USA, but it's really on a much smaller scale. Our water might not taste as good down here, but it's everything else runs smoothly.
Well, it's like a friend of mine sent me a meme of the Germantown City water tower, and it had the thing like you see at the gas pump, diesel, unleaded, said diesel like $4.59. He goes, I'm getting ready to take a diesel shower. Unbelievable. Can't wait to hear him explain this one. But look, Mitch, we've run out of time, and I know you got to get in there with the bank, but also you talked about patriotism and love. My friend Eddie Murphy, I've known since kindergarten. We're talking about the EdMurphyClassic.com, Murphey. It's Murphy spelled Murphey. August 4th and 5th at Rhodes College. He said, Rob, a lot of these runners, these track and field athletes that wrap themselves in the flag, red, white, and blue, they're working 2 and 3 jobs just for the privilege to run for their country. I'm going to tell you something. Get out and support an event like this. Eddie Murphy father passed away in 2014. I knew Mr. Murphy, biggest Tennessee fan on the planet, but he is giving back. Eddie said they're going, they were telling the kids, hey, come out to MUS, come out to Christian Brothers. They're going now where these kids are. They've got a 9-year-old kid that showed up at a meet and ran a 26.2 200 meter. So you know what? Build track and field, they will come. Mitch, I love it. Great writers. You got Bill Curry coming on in about 30 minutes. Tell people how they can follow you. Let's do this again next week. I want to hear about Sunbelt. And you need to hook up with my man, the Sultan of the Sunbelt, Schultz, Dave Schultz. The guy is the Sultan of the Sunbelt, and Lafayette, Louisiana, covers the University of Louisiana. Not University of Louisiana Lafayette. He'll sucker punch you. It's Louisiana Lafayette, all right? Tell them how they can follow you. Have a great day. And I think you're going to be the grand poobah in a new Shriners parade coming up. So tell people about that. I'm kidding. No, tell them about how they follow you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mitch Davis _8 on Twitter, and also themitchdavisshow.com is your one-stop shop. I don't know how many articles I published last week from the Southeastern Conference Media Days. As these coaches talk at Sunbelt Media Days, they say something cool, then we're going to write about that today as well. So follow me on both places, and I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on, Rob.
Always love it, Mitch. You're a credit. Keep working hard. Over 400 in-person games in the last 5 years, and we're just getting cranked up, man. Have a great day. Great luck with Coach Curry. Don't forget to ask him about Larry Morris and Shan Morris and about his girlfriend never had a B. He said, neither have I.
I got you, Rob. Y'all have a good day.
All right. Salute. Bye. All right. We're going to be joined here in just a minute by Doug Dean, AU Dose in Birmingham, and he's got a lot to tell. And I tell you, having a guy like Mitch Davis on, what I love about Mitch is he's out there, covering the stories. And this is another one that is that you talk about a guy that's hardcore. And Doug Dean just got in this morning at 6:23 a.m. on the Greyhound bus coming back from Alaska. It took him 4 weeks to get there. He fished for a day and a half. It took him a month to get back. No, Doug just got back from Alaska. Before we talk football, Doug, it's about 150 over here in the Mississippi Delta. Couple that with flooded rice fields, mosquitoes the size of golf balls. Cool us all off and tell us about fishing on the Kenai and the Russian River and catching some sockeye salmon and fighting with grizzly bears. And did you drink a Ham's beer while you were up there?
We were kind of into the Rainier beer. You ever had that?
That sounds too fancy.
It's I guess so named after Mount Rainier. But yeah, it was a great time. I brought back with me as a souvenir the gift that keeps on giving, COVID-19, and there's probably somebody listening right now that just put their mask on thinking that it's unsafe just to watch me, but it's mild symptoms, so I'm going to push on through. We had a tremendous week in the last frontier, and if it's not on everyone's bucket list, whether you're a fisherman or hunter, is kind of beside the point. It's one of those vast wildernesses and unbelievable panoramas that everyone should find a way to take in sooner than later. So great, but it's still great to be back in Birmingham. One of the reasons I keep doing that trip, Rob, I tolerate the summer here in the South. Yeah. Other people love it. So if you can steal a week like that, and we had highs of 64, lows of 50 at night, that's a beautiful thing.
Well, the weather up there, and then the long nights. How much daylight do you get?
Well, it's a challenge. I'm one of those people that when my physical battery runs out, I could be in mid-sentence myself and fall asleep, so I don't have any trouble. But most people, because you still get dim light all the way to midnight, and it really never gets what we think of as, dark 30.
Yeah.
But, you would start to feel like you need to go to bed about 10 or 11 if you go by sunlight. Then you need some good shades to pull down in your room to fool yourself that it's time to go to bed. So that part is, I couldn't live in Alaska year round for that reason. And you get a lot of dark around the clock during the winter, which is why they have some mental health and alcohol challenges in parts of Alaska.
Yeah. I mean, Everybody, I know you met Jim and Michelle up there. This is their 4th trip up to Alaska, and they go for 3-4 months at a time. But I tell you, I admire it, man. I love seeing those pictures of y'all. Because he says sometimes you're walking down a path to a stream, you're like, oh, this looks beautiful. And all of a sudden you look over there and there's Mama Grizzly Bear with a couple of cubs, and you're going, you know what? I think she's better suited for this.
As usual, we shared the fishing space up in Crescent Lake in the glaciers with a juvenile black or grizzly bear, brown bear. But when you say juvenile, people tend to think, oh, it must be about 40 or 50 pounds. A young teenage bear is about 400 or 500 pounds and can wreak some havoc. But you just learn about this 20 or 30 yard buffer they have, and you'd be wise not to invade that buffer and cause them to act funny. But we had no problems with them.
Yeah. Dude, let me do this. We're going to take a quick commercial break. You got a lot to tell us about. Get well. I know you will. I want to say something about one of our sponsors. We're blessed to have great sponsors. Ann Camp Lee, rumbleboxinggym.com, 1835 Union Avenue in Midtown Memphis, right near the corner of Union and McLean, across from Walgreens. Open every day of the week. The classes are 45 minutes long. It's like 15 3-minute sessions. You're doing a lot of calisthenics, star jacks, burpees, dips, planks, dumbbells. Then you hit the bag, jab, jab, hook, hook, punch, punch. Intense. It's like swimming on land, 45 minutes. Go to the website, sidelines.live, and you'll see it, rumbleboxinggym.com. Awesome workout. Any age, any level. They got people that come every day. They got one guy that comes sometimes multiple times a day. Damn proud to have them. Let's take some commercials from some more of our sponsors. We're going to be right back with Doug Dean down in the Magic City. AU Dose, just back from Alaska. He's cooling us off just talking about it.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Doug Dean, no matter where you go, like you're up there in Alaska, and you were, what was the nearest big city? Because Jim and Michelle are like, there's not a lot of roads in Alaska. So getting around up there, you better know what you're doing. You better have 4-wheel drive.
Yeah, no question about it. Where we are, the Kenai River, most people know, connects to the Gulf of Alaska. And so the salmon spawn in Lake Kenai Lake. They're there 2 years or so, and they go out to sea for 3 years and back into, usually the studies show, if you can believe it, the same salmon will try to get within about 100 feet of the exact spot they were spawned. And people might wonder, what do they have, a MapQuest or GPS? No, it's their sense of smell. They're spending those first 2 years in the lake getting the chemistry of that specific unique water, and then they use magnetic forces to know exactly where the river is and go back to where they first spawned. But we saw Soldotna. I don't know that that's a big city, and to be honest, it's not a destination city other than the Kenai River. But get what you need to camp and work, fish, hunt outdoors, and there are some cool things to see up there. Kenai itself is a pretty cool city, some pretty good restaurant, food and wine scene there. But Anchorage is where you would fly into, the biggest city by population in Alaska. And the thing that, we'll get on to football in a minute, but the thing that is one of the funniest T-shirts I've seen is people in Texas are correctly proud of how large the landmass is in Texas, and the T-shirt had the map outline of Alaska just dwarfing Texas, and it said Alaska pissing off Texans since 1964. So it's just, it is, and yet there are only about 800,000 or 900,000 is the population in Alaska, because it's just too brutal for most people to live in.
Yeah, it is interesting. Real quick, one sports thing from Dave Cody, listening out in Bellingham, Washington, about 40 miles from Mount Baker, said we had a 10-year-old shoot 6 under. Listen to this. A 10-year-old shoot 6 under 66 Saturday in the Nota Begay Junior Regional Qualifier. Now he's on every college golf team's radar. Unbelievable stories.
Really?
But and Doug, speaking of out west, right when the show ended yesterday, my youngest son, Max, who's doing his 4th summer out in Moose and Jackson Hole, Wyoming, calls me, and he was in Durant, Montana, in the middle of nowhere, as he said. And he goes, Dad, I left my debit card. And I said, where? 4 hours back at the gas station. Emergency. How do you handle it? He had to open up an account at Stockman's Bank and have the money forwarded to him. He was going, and he got to Spokane, Washington last night for a hiking trip. He's got 5 days off. He's doing it solo, man. Girlfriend couldn't go, but I love the rugged outdoors. And I'm going to tell you something, man. I want to hear about Big Cat Weekend coming up, recruiting. Yep. There's a lot happening. We had fun at Media Days last week. You had fun in Alaska, and now it's time for the Big Cat to prowl.
Yeah, let me do a deep dive. Have you had Jason Caldwell or any of the Auburn beat writers on recently?
Not since we got back yesterday. No, Saturday. No, we didn't. No, we have not. We have not talked recruiting. We've been waiting for you. Or yes.
So, first time, anytime you talk about recruiting in this brutally competitive Southeastern Conference, and then going up against the biggies like Texas, Clemson, Oklahoma, two of which will be in the SEC in a year, then you have to, unless you're Alabama or Georgia, frankly, right now, to tip the hat to both of those tremendous recruiting programs who are leveraging their success to maximum effect, and more power to them. But if you're Hugh Freeze and Auburn and a handful of others, Arkansas, to an extent Tennessee, LSU has always recruited well. If they don't, then they should fire their coach, because they've got the unbelievable base in that state of Louisiana. But you preface it by saying anything can change in the 12th or 24th hour. But as it stands, any Auburn person should be extremely excited about the caliber and number of players that are coming to visit the Big Cat Weekend, that was branded and launched, as everyone will remember, by the exciting, energetic, if not controversial, Trooper Taylor and that coaching staff under Chiswick that was able to change how we think of Auburn recruiting. I won't go through the whole list; it's so exhaustive. But any person that follows Auburn or recruiting in general can very easily find who Auburn's commitments are, that leading off with quarterback Walker White out of Little Rock. But if you look at targets that are going to be visiting this weekend at Big Cat, 5-star defensive end Cam Franklin, 5-star athlete KJ Bolden, 5-star defensive back Zaquan Patterson, and the biggie 4-star really should be a 5-star. He's currently an Alabama commit, wide receiver Perry Thompson, that, depending on who you talk to, he might be leaning at least slightly Auburn's direction. Or is he doing what recruits have been known to do, playing games and having fun, and he ends up at Alabama anyway? And the one that might be the most watched and competitive is out of Chilton County, Alabama, 4-star outside linebacker DeMarcus Riddick. If you've already got Joseph Phillips out of Tallahassee, and you add Riddick, all of a sudden Auburn is set in class of 24 at the linebacker position. 4-star linebacker Bradley Shaw, 4-star DB Jalewis Solomon. Keep an eye on Auburn for that one. Wide receiver Malcolm Simmons. Keep an eye on Auburn there. And so it's just, and then I didn't even go into class of 25, but there will be upwards of 20 recruits in Auburn, and you talk about creating excitement and momentum, that will do it for you. And then I'll just tell you who I think, without guarantees, but a decent chance that Auburn fans could be very happy this weekend. Not that they'll all announce their commitment this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe 3 of those players did exactly that, but some may commit privately, and we don't find out until they have their big announcement.
Yeah.
I think Auburn has a above average shot at Riddick, the linebacker, and anytime you land a 5-star like that, that's a really big deal, especially when you're beating teams like Alabama and Georgia. I think Auburn still has a good shot at flipping 5-star Perry Thompson. That would have some shockwaves. Keep an eye on Carter. That could pop this week. Simmons could announce at any point. I think Auburn might be pulling into a slight lead for TJ Lindsey at IMG and a couple others I don't want to mention quite yet. So it's set up over the next 2 weeks will tell the story. Is Hugh Freeze still coming up short, losing slightly, being the bridesmaid on some of these? Or if he hits on most of them, I think Hugh Freeze, at least for the next 2 weeks, could be the talk of the town, Rob Browne.
I won't be surprised at all, because the closed for business sign that was in the window of the Auburn football operations office, it's gone. But that's really honestly how you felt. And you and I are more critical of Auburn than we are of any school. That's our school. But they should be called out. And again, paying $15 million to Brian Harsin, don't tell me that money's tight. If you can piss away money like that, then you must have more money than sense.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm a little belated on this, but there's still a lot of angles to talk about around SEC Media Days, and 2 takeaways for me. I'll leave it to other writers to exhaustively cover all 14 coaches and how well they mastered, Rob, the art of coach speak. Year after year, I always find Lane Kiffin the most compelling, because he will say what's on his mind. The others are more guarded. And I don't want to be unfair to Ole Miss, good hotty-toddy fans, but I thought on the one hand, Kiffin seemed a little down, a lower energy, and a little frustrated. Yeah. On the other hand, I really appreciate his candor, and he is 100% right. He started saying it more than 2 years ago, that the NCAA has, with, sort of hand was forced by Supreme Court, but they have created a monster. And we, as it stands, which has been exhaustively covered on your show with many different guests, we just don't have a product and a process that makes sense if the goal is to have a competitive, fairly level playing field. And so I'm with Kiffin. They have come out of the closet giving higher salary caps to the schools whose donors are willing to write the biggest checks to a collective for what we all know is not NIL for the most part. It's pay for play, and kids for the most part are selecting the school that is the highest bidder. And who am I to be critical of that? So I appreciated Kiffin's candor. He did sound a little whiny at times. On the other hand, I thought Hugh Freeze, given the circumstances of his first year and that he needs to be guarded about seeming cooperative and compliant with how Commissioner Sankey wants to run this league, he said nothing that brought controversy, and I think that was his number one. He needed to be coach speak a little bit, but I did like how Freeze, my favorite line was, which is fascinating, he's self-aware enough that while he was out of work, but I guess before he got the Liberty gig, who can blame him? He spent considerable time in person with both Saban and Kirby Smart and gave away a lot of his terminology. So if you heard that, what did Freeze do? He was smart enough to realize he needed to not only bring Montgomery in, who's a little more up to the minute with modern RPOs and so on, but let him call the plays and change the terminology so that you don't you don't have a problem with trade secrets being an advantage when you play Auburn's two biggest rivals.
Yeah, he did allude to that in his speech. He said, I realized that I've been around. I've been coaching a while, and a lot of people who've coached with me are in coaching at other places to the northwest of Auburn and to the northeast of Auburn. But it's funny because, he did a great job of holding everybody's attention. And here's a guy that screwed up. We all know he did. But, and after he made his mistake, we all know what happened. He didn't fight. He didn't fight for that money on the table. And it was a substantial amount of money. He said, look, I let you down. I let myself down. I let my family down. And you know what? I got to live with this. And he's working through it. It's like whatever happens. And that's sports. And that's life. And I thought he did a really good job. But you're right. You've got to change. It's like in business. People work for you. Then they leave. You teach them a lot. And that's the risk. But you're going to have relationships. But, the NFL, I think practices, at least in the preseason, are wide open. I think if we want to get the college football fans, if you're worried about the fans drifting away, open up practices. Do your coaches show on the town square. Everybody bring a sack lunch, serve cold beer. I've always said Browne Harsin, any coach when he was at Auburn, after a game, go out and tailgate with people, win or lose. You got troopers with you. Nobody's going to hurt you.
Yeah. And, to me, I think the media, and I don't know who all gets to submit a vote, how large the number. I don't think it's the size of the AP poll or even coaches poll, but it was as if in putting this Auburn team that has been transformed through the portal. And Hugh Freeze himself said, honestly, I feel great about our team. I know we made Auburn better in the portal and some moves we're making. But it was as if, Rob, the voters think that Bryan Harsin is still the head coach at Auburn. 6th in the SEC West. And as far as I'm concerned, boy, was that a motivational gift to Hugh Freeze. I believe it when I see that Auburn doesn't challenge to be, maybe in the upper half of the SEC West, which is not good enough. We understand that. Yeah. But just something about this team as they come together, my instinct is telling me, and I don't know which one, but there's going to be some game that Auburn is not supposed to win, that this coaching staff finds a way to do it. But there may also be some game that we had no business losing, like that second Cal game that could be tricky because the situation is so weird playing that late at night, that far away on the road.
Yeah, you're right. That's it. You got to be acclimated. The Auburn football advanced team will leave Sunday probably for the game on that next Saturday. The 18-wheelers taking Auburn football Inc. across the country. There's an advance party that gets there. But I go back to what you said about the culture. There's some things that still got to be cleaned out, some leftover problems. You got to be early, not on time. You got to be early. You got to show up. 95% of life is showing up with a positive attitude. Okay. Yeah. And I'm really impressed with the student athletes, the guys that I talked to at SEC Media Days. I go back to Kingsley Igakwan, offensive lineman for Florida. And I think I may have sent you that soundbite. I'll send it after the show if I didn't. Asking him about NIL. And he said, look, I'm a Gator. I'm at UF. I'm getting my degree here. This is my home. And you know what? If you got a question, are you here? Are you a Gator? Are you a Georgia Bulldog? Are you a Memphis Tiger, Arkansas Razorback, Tennessee Vol, LSU Tiger, Texas Longhorn? What are you here for? And he goes, money. Because I said, you can have relationships for life. He goes, yeah. He goes, that's a silly reason. And you think about, and we're going to be on, and I hope you'll stay on with me. Eddie Robinson III will be on here in just a few minutes. And just think about, I used to just watch that coach's show in Memphis, 10 o'clock Sunday mornings. I used to watch that. And I'll never forget that time when he said, football teaches the lessons of life. You get knocked down, you get back up. You get knocked down again, you get back up. But a man's got to get back up and fight, because one day you're going to have a family and a job and responsibilities, and you got to fight. I mean, why do we love sports, Doug? That says it right there.
The lessons of life and the drama, the pageantry, everything about it. It's like Jay Gouge. It may not have been original, but he liked to say to those who might be cynical about football and athletics in a university, it's the front porch of your university. It gets people there. Why wouldn't you want your front porch to look beautiful and shiny and be inviting? But then when you get through the front door, you've got to have something of substance to offer in the way of higher education.
Yeah. By the way, I love the cicadas in the background. What is it? The one every 17 years that come up out of the ground, the meow, meow, meow. There's cicadas and then there's locusts. Now, which ones are these?
This is probably the cicadas. And
I love them.
Thought it was best to get out here to keep the COVID in fresh air.
Yeah. No, are you in Vestavia or are you down at the lake?
No, I'm back home. I got home.
Yeah.
Sunday.
All right. So, but I think bottom line is what is happening. And I saw this though with multiple student athletes that I talked to up there, and they're like, hey, I'm here. And I think what we're starting to see happen is, and I've been reading, if you read between the lines, when you read, there should always be takeaway. And I've been reading some high school kids saying, hey, I'm committed to whatever school for the next 3 or 4 years. That's where I'm going. He said, the portal is where you go if you're not ready. Almost half these kids going into the portal are not getting picked up. And you know what? There's an old saying, don't ever quit your job unless you've already got another one lined up.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the portal is, folks. A lot of these kids think it's going to be better. Hey, the grass may be greener on the other side of the street, but it's still got to be cut.
Yeah, and what Kiffin said, I couldn't agree with him more. At some point, whether it is accomplished in D.C., God help us, or otherwise, you need players and coaches need the ability to have a predictable time period of a contract. All right, you're going to be compensated as follows, but you are under contract through the 2024 season. And if you believe there's a process of at least buying out that contract or not receiving NIL compensation. Right now, any given day, you have a bad practice, coach was mean to you, you can throw your name in the portal. It's that is unsustainable, putting it mildly.
Yeah. And you know what? With your kids, you've got 3. I've got 4 now with Mallory, and she's just telling us her birthday this year will be on Thanksgiving. I thought that was the last Thursday, November 23rd. That's right. It is. It's the 4th Thursday. Yeah, I got it messed up there. But interesting thing here again from Dave Cody. Pretty cool. And he was saying something about this 10-year-old golfer. He played with the white tees, the regular men's tees, to hit like that. Going to be fun to watch out there. But Dave says a lot of his golfers are American Indians, and they fish salmon. They use nets. It's called reef fishing. I don't know if you saw people doing that up there in Alaska, but I'm with you. I need to get my arse up to Alaska. And the one thing about it is, no matter where it's just, we need wide open spaces, like, getting out west and come over here to Arkansas. 2 hours from where I am, I can be in 57-degree Spring River, Rockbridge. You can't do it enough. And we're going to have a great Boyd Wade will be on with us Wednesday at 9, talking about trout fishing, some of the secrets to successful trout fishing, rainbows, browns, cutthroat, brook. They've now got a cut bow. There's even a golden trout now. But I'm going to tell you, the state of Arkansas, it's got unbelievable, the white, the red, Little Red River, and, of course, the spring. But I tell you what, Doug, you fish a lot. You're outdoors a lot like I am. Bandit and Avery have come up with these new performance hoodies that you wear for fishing. They've even got a face mask. It's a hood, and it's this material. And I was on the John Deere last night. I got to finish after the show, ran out of gas, and the gas station was closed. Don't have a lot of choices out in the middle of here. but I put that thing on, and it's like it cools you while you're out there, but it's good for your skin, for protection. Folks, these things are unreal. Even got my wife one. She goes, "Oh, you just got two and claimed that you got one for me." I'm like, "Well, you'd wear my stuff anyway." But Doug, real quick before Eddie Robinson joins us, what you said about recruiting, and I'm getting information. I'm getting texts from people from, all over the country. This is wild, and they're going, "I haven't heard this positive narrative about Auburn recruiting in so long. Thank you, Doug Dean. Get well soon." I like that.
Yeah, that's appreciated. Yeah, I got mild symptoms. It's no big deal, at least to this point. But I appreciate the good wishes. This is my second time to get the Rona, the vid. So you figure that your immunities are helping you at this point.
Well, bottom line is you got back. Did you start feeling bad when you were in Alaska, or did it just when you got back?
We had, like will happen now, I think we'd all kind of declared victory on this coronavirus and China virus. But it's like the cold and flu for the most part right now. So I think a couple of guys thought they had cold symptoms, knowing what we know now, probably COVID. But, got to go on, get on with our lives. I'll clear this probably by tomorrow, and let's get on with some football.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you'll be working remote today with the old laptop. But the thing about recruiting is it is all about momentum, and momentum is everything. And you think about as you get toward this Big Cat weekend, golly, man, I haven't heard again, Doug. Got that text from you last night. We were about to go for a run, and then I got back on the tractor, and then my phone died, and I was like, well, I'm going to start cutting. You got to cut it dark around here. It's so hot. But I read what you sent me, and I was like, holy shnikes, okay? We love college football. It's all about history, traditions, and heroes. Spring Eddie Robinson III on here with us right now. And Eddie, got to meet you last year. That was really, really a special night at the Nick Saban Legacy Award dinner there in Birmingham. You and your family, you were multiple generations were there. Your grandfather, Doug and I were just talking. Doug Dean's on from the AU Dose in Birmingham. This show's theme is history, traditions, and heroes. First of all, thank you for taking time out of your morning to join us. And what I love about this, the whole thing is, as a kid, I told Doug this, I used to watch the Eddie Robinson, the Grambling football show Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock in Memphis. It was on everywhere. And you look at the accomplishments of your grandfather, and it makes you really proud because, hell, he won like 9 Black College National Championships. He coached for, 56 years at the same school. Over 200 players went to the NFL. But what I remember most about your grandfather was that great line, football teaches the lessons of life. You get knocked down, you get back up. You get knocked down, you get back up. And you keep fighting because you're a man and you're going to have a lot of battles in life. And you're going to have to remember that you got back up and you kept fighting. That legacy right there says everything about Eddie Robinson. And then you think about the coaches and how much respect that your grandfather still has and your name has. We're honored to have you.
Thank you, Rob. How you doing? Good morning, Doug. Good morning, Sidelines. To accomplish what he accomplished, when he did and how he had to go about it, it certainly speaks volumes. And, to have a coach like Nick Saban, to honor him posthumously.
Yeah.
Hey, you couldn't get a higher honor or better honor coming from someone like Coach Nick Saban. We're just gracious, just like he would be had he been alive. And, we're humbled to just continue his legacy. So that's what we're charged with now, and to go around the country and various coaches, head coaches, assistant coaches, you get them to the side and they tell you how my grandfather, Coach Eddie Robinson, has touched their lives or spoke a word to them at the coaches convention here and there, and I just take it all in.
I love hearing that. And Doug, that night, Steve Spurrier was there, and Eddie Robinson's family, and Eddie the Third here was there, and your dad was there. That was football royalty. Archie Manning was there, and all these people. And you think back, 56 years at one school. You talk about love and devotion, Doug. They don't make them like that anymore.
No, they don't. And Eddie, it's just good to see you online. I wish we were in person. We'll do, if you ever get near Birmingham or Memphis, Rob and I would love to take you and yours to dinner. That'd be an honor. But I'll tell you, when you think about Coach Robinson, your grandfather, to me, if there could be a fair analysis, and there really can't, you're trying to compare different eras, different levels. The GOAT, the greatest of all time, is Coach Eddie Robinson. And I promise, Rob, I do not say that in any way to besmirch Coach Davis, Coach Browne, or anyone. But you, from the stories that have been passed down to you, Eddie, was, of course, he wanted to win games. You coached to win, and you coached to be competitive, but he also was more than anything else, which frankly is how I think of the legacy of Coach Pat Dye, especially his time at Auburn. Coach Eddie Robinson turned student athletes into men who went on to be productive after football. Do you agree?
Yeah, I tell you, my grandfather, of course, he, like any college coach, he wanted to win games. But I mean, he certainly would, put his student athletes, their well-being. He stressed education, of course. He also stressed for his student athletes to attend church and praise God. And so, when he was recruiting, that was still a great sell to the parents of the student athletes. And, I mean, he had to deal with what he dealt with, from Jim Crow to everything. But a lot of folks really don't know or didn't know about the relationship he had with Coach Bear Bryant and some of the other great coaches. And, in 1985, when, the media, of course, was following my grandfather and Grambling as he was approaching Bear Bryant's record and, of course, eclipsed that record. He and Bear were such good friends that when talking with him, away from everyone else, grandson to grandfather, I mean, he really didn't want the emphasis to be on that. He just wanted to continue winning games. And, it kind of painstakingly, it kind of bothered him that, hey, they're making a big thing about me eclipsing my friend's record, but of course, I mean, that goes with the territory. And, like I say, a lot of folks don't know that they had a pretty good relationship.
Well, and that says a lot about Coach Bryant, that he knew it was in his interest to form and nurture a friendship with Coach Robinson.
Well, hey guys, I mean, I was tuning in earlier, and I heard you speaking about your Alaska trip. So, man, sounds like some good fishing occurred up there, and man.
Well, and I don't. Hey, Eddie, if I'm trying to, Rob, maybe I'll get a sponsor of Alaska fish processing, since we're spending a little time on that. But never that before this morning have I loved my FedEx delivery guy, because they're supposed to give about 100 pounds of sockeye salmon and halibut show up at the front door this morning.
Wow.
I love that.
Rob, I'm going to have to get up your way. You know, I'm in Grambling at the moment, so I'm not too far from you. You're in striking distance.
Yeah, let me tell you something funny. Rick Neuheisel was telling this story. You remember the night he and Lauren Sisler were the co-MCs of the Saban Legacy Dinner when they, awarded the award to your grandfather. And Rick Neuheisel was talking about he was in Ruston doing the game for CBS against Louisiana Tech, and it's maybe 10 minutes from Grambling. And he went over there and he said, being a kid from, Rick was from around Phoenix metro area. And he said, I was just in awe because it's kind of the cradle. It's like going, some friends of mine that were camped out under the stars between the Tigris and the Euphrates River in the Gulf War in Iraq. And they woke up and they said, God, I'm in Mesopotamia, going back to the Bible. The first time I crossed the Tiber River to go to the Vatican in Rome, I was like, this is not real. And I forgot my wallet and had to go back to the hotel and get it. But it's just, your grandfather, what he means to college football is about God, family, and country. I mean, he, in 1941, there's a world war going on. And I don't know if he was deployed, but he's coaching. And, like I said, he was up against a lot. And he was a happy man. He loved his country. And I think if we were smart, we'd be reading and having books about his life, his story to kids, and their parents read about your grandfather to their kids, about a man who loves his country. We're not perfect. I mean, he had to go through hell. But I never heard him complain. He was a happy man. He loved his country. He loved his school. He loved his family. There's a lot to be said about that. In fact, there's not enough said about it.
And well, I'll tell you, Rob, he just, he was a simple man. I mean, he fell in love with the game of football, as a elementary student. And I mean, he just simply loves the game of football. And when you mention the 40s, I mean, when World War II approached, I mean, they couldn't field teams. And he ended up coaching high school football and high school girls basketball during that period, just to, continue coaching. And of course, when the war ended, a lot of the men returned, and he, was able to, resume his college coaching career. But you talk about North Louisiana along the I-20 corridor. I mean, Grambling's like, depending on which road you take, 5 miles one way, 4 miles the other way, 3 miles another way. That's how close we are to Louisiana Tech University, and 30 miles down the road in Monroe, Louisiana, is University of Louisiana Monroe, which is formerly Northeast Louisiana. Hour just slightly southwest of Grambling is Natchitoches, which is our northwestern state. So, I mean, you're talking about a football haven. This is the way I grew up, guys. I mean, notable high school football programs and notable college football programs. And, we all know, Coach O played at Northwestern State. Guy played high school ball with Odessa Turner. Was in school with him, who went on to play in the NFL for a number of years. And, what can we say about Louisiana Tech? Terry Bradshaw and others, just not too long ago, who our current Super Bowl champion, L'Jarius Sneed, played football at Louisiana Tech as well. And, I'm real close with him and his family. Of course, I tried to recruit him to Grambling, but I told him once he chose Louisiana Tech, I was going to continue to follow him and support him. So, yeah, this is a cradle of football right here.
Eddie, to your point, sorry if I walked on you. I think, and it's kind of challenging to prove this other than going back and creating ratings for different big time players at Division One, really at every level, Power Five, Division Two, and Three. But I think if you limited a head coach and his staff to only recruiting, they could go handpick anybody they wanted every year in the state of Louisiana. My opinion is if they could get everyone they wanted up to the limits of scholarship limits, they could be top 5 or 10 every year. Do you agree?
Yeah, I believe so. I was listening to you guys, of course, earlier, and kind of speaking on the state of college football now. I mean, of course, we got NIL and the transfer portal, and I kind of feel like they rolled both things out, and kind of probably should have secured some guidelines, certainly some measures, so that all schools, and their programs can kind of, have a chance at continuing to be competitive. I mean, we all know the SEC is the SEC, but everybody else, needs to be able to fairly compete for student athletes. So, yeah, I mean, in the past, when the schools were, segregated in the South, my grandfather certainly, had his pick of the black student athletes, and a lot of the old heads, call the Southwestern Athletic Conference the SEC before it is the SEC now. And Grambling has, of course, 4 Pro Football Hall of Famers. Hopefully, we'll have 2. We got 2 that are up for it. Albert Lewis, and of course, the great Everson Walls. So could possibly have those 2 guys go in at some point.
Hold these thoughts. We're going to take a quick commercial break and come right back with you because, man, Doug, I can't help but be drawn to the background of his set. I mean, that's maybe you can walk us around and show us some of that. Everson Walls, Dallas Cowboys. I mean, over 200. But the legacy of your grandfather is that he didn't love the game of football as much as he loved the people in his family. That's very obvious. And you are so much like him, your demeanor and your calmness. Man, we need people like you out in the public spotlight more often. Take a quick commercial break. Eddie Robinson III from Grambling, Louisiana. Doug's got to check out. Get better, Doug. Thank you for being on here with us.
Good to see you, Eddie.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Rob Browne back with you on this Tuesday edition of Sidelines. I want to say again something about RumbleBoxingGym.com, 1835 Union Avenue in Midtown Memphis, corner of Union and McLean. They're open every day of the week. You can find them on our website at www.sidelines.live, RumbleBoxingGym.com. Think about it, folks. The workout, 45-minute sessions, 15 3-minute rounds. That's like a championship prize heavyweight fight. Don't see a lot of those go 15 rounds. You go to that practice, you go to Rumble Boxing Gym, you're going a full 45. That's the way it is. No quit. They will do jumping jacks, star jacks, burpees, dips, planks, dumbbells. Then you hit those bags. They're 250-pound teardrops coming out of the ceiling, made out of this rubber material with water in them. They're incredible. They're easy on your joints, your metatarsals. An incredible workout. RumbleBoxingGym.com. Yeah, I used a fancy word, metatarsals. I think that's the bones in your hand. I'm certainly no orthopedic surgeon, Eddie, but RumbleBoxingGym.com. So proud and blessed to have them as a sponsor, as we are all of our sponsors. And also want to say something about Gaddis Home Innovations. You're building a man cave and you're doing a home office. You're putting in Bloombergs. You're doing remote work. You want to have security cameras. You want to control everything at the palm of your hand with your iPhone, your Android, whatever. Gaddis Home Innovation can make it happen. I've known George 45 years. He can fix anything. Security cameras, again, computers, televisions, mount them, anything. Go to GaddisHome.com, GaddisHome.com. Eddie, the background there, let's maybe you can walk around and show, but is this your office or are you at, honestly, a museum? This is some cool stuff I'm seeing in the background. Let's talk about it a little bit. We got about 9 minutes left with you, and we're going to I want to hear you talk about the legacy of Eddie Robinson. This is great.
All right. Thanks, Rob. I'm actually residing at my parents' home, which is what I usually do when I'm in Grambling. So yeah, this is the home of the late Coach Eddie Robinson Jr. Wow. So yeah, this is actually his little awards and trophy case area, I guess you can say. Yeah. You can probably, I don't know if
I see him. Yeah, it's impressive.
The camera, but we're college football. We're not just Grambling per se. I mean, we love football. I mean, from the smallest division up, of course, to the top division, FBS, and up behind me is Golden Helmet from Notre Dame. Can you see that one up there?
That's what I'm looking at.
That's actually the helmet of my nephew, Quentin, Coach Quentin Burrell. He just recently got hired at Southern University to become their receivers coach, but he actually got his college football start, of course, here at Grambling State under then Coach Broderick Fobbs. But Quentin grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. He attended Southwest DeKalb High School, which
Decatur.
Yeah. Coach Buck Godfrey was the coach. Yeah. And Quentin actually was pretty highly recruited coming out of Southwest DeKalb. He was actually recruited by Coach Nick Saban when he was at LSU. And he tells me the story that, when he visited LSU, and Quentin played defensive back, safety corner. And he said he visited Coach Saban, and Coach Saban wanted him at the time to commit, but Quentin had, he had confirmed other visits and wanted to, honor, his commitment. Yeah. So Notre Dame was there all along. Actually, Alabama recruited him at the time. He wanted to make those visits, and he ended up, at that time, if you don't commit when the head coach tells you to commit sometimes, then, they may go after the next kid at that position, but they will tell you, hey, we'll probably still have something for you. But Quentin kind of knew the lay of the land and how recruiting works. So he was recruited by Georgia Tech and others, but Grambling actually was the school of his choice, and Coach Doug Williams was the coach at the time.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I don't know, he didn't get recruited by them until the last minute. And Quinn's from the Robinson bloodline, so we're gonna be loyal to the folks who were there, at the onset, at the beginning. So Notre Dame was there, of course, and he ended up he didn't want to stay in Atlanta. So Bob Davie was the coach at the time who actually recruited and landed him at Notre Dame. He played at the time of where I think his freshman year was Bob Davie's last year. So he ended up, coming under, what was the, I can't think of him right now. What was the coach after Bob Davie at Notre Dame at the time? I think it was
after Bob Davie. Wow, let me think here. That wasn't Ty Willingham.
Ty Willingham, yeah. Okay. For some reason, I couldn't pull Ty's name, but
because he came from Stanford.
So that's Quentin's Notre Dame helmet that's up there, and of course, let's see, there is a Ohio State helmet around here, right there.
Looking at it, I see it.
Yeah,
doesn't have the Buckeyes on it.
Yeah, that helmet was from the. At the time, they had the, it was in conjunction with the Black Coaches Association at the time, the Eddie Robinson Football Classic. And so that helmet was actually presented to my grandfather for that game. So,
well, I mean, Eddie, the bottom line is, you go back and look what college football and sports mean to people. They pull everybody together. And you think about when we integrated in the South, and Coach Pat Dye was an assistant at Alabama in 1969, and Coach Bryant was in Phoenix at the coaches convention. And you mentioned about people that have talked about your grandfather. And Coach McKay told Coach Bryant he was going to sign the best player in Alabama. And he said, "Who's that?" And he said, "Wilbur Jackson. It's a running back down in Ozark, down in the Wiregrass, Ozark, Alabama." And Coach Dye happened to be the lucky one to get the phone call in the football office. I'm sure the secretary said, "Coach Bryant's on the phone." And everybody said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I want you to get down to Ozark and go get Wilbur Jackson." He said, and so Coach Dye had grown up in South Georgia on a 3,000-acre cotton farm. He said half the families were black, half of them white. He said we had about 25 families. We spend the night at their house. They spend the night at our house. And Coach Dye famously once said on that 150th anniversary of college football in 2019, he said, I grew up, working side by side, black folks and white folks. We all want the same thing. He said, come to think of it, I ain't ever been segregated a day in my life. And they went and got Wilbur Jackson and John Mitchell, who was from Mobile, who was in the junior college. And, it changed everything. And Coach Dye was at the Sugar Bowl. Auburn played Michigan, January 2nd, 1984, at the dinner at Commander's Palace, I think the night before the game. And he said, growing up as I did, there's a lot of things happening in America for the better. And he said, but ain't nothing brought people together more than college football. And you think about your grandfather and the respect people have, I mean, I don't give I tell you, you think about it. When my dad graduated from Auburn in 1954, goes to Camp Stewart, Georgia. There were 21 black soldiers in his platoon as a platoon leader. They wore the same uniform, had the same flag on their shoulder. And I think about your grandfather coming up when he did. I mean, all the interviews we've seen with him, he never complained. He talked about being in the greatest country in the world. And to think about it, in the 40s, he couldn't even field football teams because his student athletes were fighting for America. He loved America. He loved his family. That's rather obvious. And you live in Dallas, don't you?
No, actually, base
Yeah.
Now, I
The
certainly,
pipeline, man.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, being back in the area has been great because, I grew up in this area and, follow the high school football, of course, college. And, I like getting back to Atlanta, for everything that is that way. And the College Football Hall of Fame, of course, is there. But certainly just trying to continue my grandfather's legacy via his charity, the Eddie Robinson Legacy Fund, and just want to continue to help America's youth. I mean, my grandfather would always say, no matter what he experienced and went through, he had hope and he had dreams of being the
Yep.
best at his position that he could possibly be. And he would always state that nobody could out American him. He believed in America, certainly all the way through. And he knew that America would be the place where he could, live out his, bring his dreams to a reality. And he stood by that always, and he actually, preached that to his student athletes and also others. I mean, my grandfather poured into not only the student athletes, but the students he encountered here at Grambling and across the country. His thing was encouraging them to, live out their dreams, reach their goals. And, of course, that's what we want to continue to do with the Eddie Robinson Legacy Fund, is to encourage and inspire America's youth.
Tell people how they can reach out and support that, because that is awesome. I did not know, because what he just said, that may be one of the best things I've ever heard. Nobody without American him. We're not a perfect country, but we're damn sure trying to be. But what your grandfather represented is love, loyalty, family, and you are so blessed. I bet you love getting to see his former players and their families when they come back. And we've got the portal and NIL and all, at the end of the day, if the only thing you have in common is money, 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 those aren't real relationships. Those are transactions almost. When I've always been told, and I believe it in my heart, and most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. And watch how people treat people who can do absolutely nothing for them. They don't have money. They can't do business with them. Just how do you treat people that you don't even know? Watch that. And that's what you just said about your grandfather. I mean, when you hear that name, Eddie Robinson, you just think of a man very humble. I remember when that record was going on, he was like, no, he felt really awkward. I know people that are very successful and the really special ones. That's what they're like. It's not about me. It's about all the people around me. And when he died in 2007, he was almost 90 years old, but that legacy. And I think that's awesome that you're there. And, wasn't like you were born on third base and think you hit a triple. You've earned it. You've lived it. You've been a part of it. And I watched the reaction of your family at the Saban Legacy Dinner and everything y'all do for college football. I mean, there are the Mannings, the Robinsons. I mean, think about that. Think about, your Mount Rushmore of college football. Robinson's right on that Mount Rushmore because of what you represent. 56 years coaching at one university. Maybe the best quote ever. Nobody without America and my grandfather. God. Do you know what you just said? In this country, we got all kind of things going on. We need to be hearing that more often. Thank you for saying that.
You're right.
Damn it. And how can people support the Robinson Legacy Fund? And give web address, whatever they can do to follow you and support it. This is fantastic. Thank you for doing it.
Well, again, Rob, thank you for having me, on your show as a guest. And, we don't take things and events that honor our grandfather lightly. And, just like him, I mean, we just want to do our part to inspire and encourage America's youth, to give back, because that in essence, that's what he really lived for. And so we just want to continue that. And thank you for the kind comments. We don't take things like this lightly. And, of course, we follow the different coaching families. I mean, you got, of course, also Archie Manning, the Manning family. We love them dearly. Coach Bryant's family. I mean, Coach Saban and his family. They've just been wonderful. But yeah, they can follow the Eddie Robinson Legacy Fund. We actually have a Facebook presence. Just type in Eddie Robinson Legacy Fund, it'll come up. We receive donations, of course. P.O. Box 818, Grambling, Louisiana 71245. We are a 501c3 organization. And we're gonna try to grow it to be one of the top sports themed charities in the world if we can. So with God's help, we will.
Well, with you as the leader, and we're going to help you. We're going to get you back on again soon. But I want to say it's been a hell of an honor, and thanks so much for coming on here and keeping Eddie Robinson, your grandfather's memory, alive for what he meant. And Rodney Orr's on here from Tider Insider, and Rodney knows the relationship Coach Bryant had with your grandfather. That's history, traditions, and heroes. Tradition never graduates. And Eddie, thank you so much. And again, it's been an honor.
Thank you, Rob. Anytime. And hey, love your show and going to continue to follow.
Man, that means a hell of a lot. Have a great day, okay?
All right, you guys too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Rodney Orr, Tider Insider, on with us now. That's a great segment with Eddie Robinson III. He's actually back at his parents' home in Grambling, Louisiana. He lives in Atlanta. And Rodney, I met him last year at the Saban Legacy Award dinner at the club up on the mountain in Birmingham. They awarded it to Steve Spurrier and Eddie Robinson posthumously, and talking about just the incredible legacy, 56 years coaching at one place, and his friendship with Coach Bryant. And boy, why do you think people love college football? Because you take a man like Paul W. Bryant from Fordyce, Arkansas, grew up one of 12 children, humble beginnings, hard work works. Look what he did, and look what Eddie Robinson, all these great ones, Shug Jordan, Johnny Vault, Frank Broyles, Darrell Royal, those legacies will live on forever. Tider Insider, man. Glad to have you, Rodney, always.
Well, I appreciate it, Rob, and you rattled off some legendary names there. I mean, obviously Eddie Robinson right there among them. Had an opportunity, when I was much younger to cover a couple of Grambling games, SWAC games, and they were always very entertaining, and he always had great teams, and they played with a lot of class, as you know. And you talked about his relationship with Coach Bryant, which they were very close. And I think at one time they discussed, playing, having a game, Alabama versus Grambling. And, it never worked out, but, that was certainly something that they discussed at one point. And, it was, just great going over there and experiencing the atmosphere when he was there at Grambling.
Yeah. Well, and it just these coaches that came up in that era, and now we're in a different era, but you know what? There's always room for class, for greatness, for people that appreciate and love the game. And just think about what it gives back to people. I mean, you're in such a fortunate position. And I can't not mention it, but folks, it is Tuesday night. 6:30 p.m. Central. Go to YouTube, Tider Insider TV. Gary Harris and Rodney Orr, 30-minute show every Tuesday, 22 minutes of content, true grit journalism. You can get the satellite view from above, but you don't know what's going on the ground. Watch Tider Insider TV. And Rodney, you get to interact with the coaches, the student athletes, and all. And that's a lot of fun, but it's also very rewarding to see people that have come, in some cases, from really, really humble beginnings. And what sports can do. You get an education, you get a degree, you get a great job. It can change not just your life, but the life of everybody around you. I mean, you've got one of the greatest jobs in the world. It's like Roman Harper and I were talking at media days. He goes, man, I got the greatest job in the world. I get to talk on TV about football and about what it does to you and what it does for you. And I get paid to do it. And he never forgets to thank the people in Prattville, Alabama. I watched him on every interview he did. He would make sure and say hello to everybody back home who gave him his first ever nickname, which was the Roman Empire.
Well, first of all, he was a really good football player, but he may even be better in his position right now. Yeah. And he was really good. He was a great football player. I mean, here at Alabama, in high school at Prattville, as you mentioned, at Alabama, and then also, in the NFL with the Saints, et cetera. But, the thing I'll say this about Roman Harper is an interesting story. Not that you're really asking, but, he wasn't recruited by Alabama initially. At that time, Mike Dubose was the head coach. They were recruiting a lot of other guys, maybe if you want to say more highly acclaimed or reputable in terms of the recruiting rankings. But once Coach Fran got here, Dennis Franchione, he started looking for guys, in the state of Alabama. He wanted the best players in the state of Alabama, and they immediately did a thorough search and a job of evaluating the top players. And Roman was one of those guys that they jumped in on and said, hey, this guy's a great athlete. He can play here. And he came here and started, 4 years, basically.
Yeah.
He was, made one of the great plays in the history of Alabama football when he tackled the Tennessee guy at the goal line and knocked the ball loose. It would have been the winning touchdown for Tennessee. So he's got a painting. There's a painting of him on that play. But, Roman Harper, I'm glad you mentioned him.
Yeah, and he was really neat. We were watching him at media days on one of his interviews before I was talking to him, and he was on Channel 12 WSFA in Montgomery. And he got through and he said, "Oh, let me say something about my folks back in Prattville." And he loves where he's from, lives up in Charlotte now. And I keep kidding with him about getting into coaching. He goes, "You always ask me that." He goes, "I'm not doing it." He goes, "I love what I do." But you're right. Every player that comes through Alabama, it's defined by what happened in your 4 or 5 year cycle there. And I think I got to ask you this question. And it's one of the, it may be one of the most significant games. It was the Florida game in 2005. I think Alabama won 31-3. But that's where Tyrone Proto out of Heflin, Alabama, if I'm not mistaken, broke his leg, severe break. And that was a huge win. 2005, Alabama got off to that 10-0 start. But even the seasons when, at that time in 05, it was Mike Shula. Every player that comes through, they're all connected. I'll be fishing, next month with Wesley Britt. He's so much fun. 6'8", 350. You ought to see him in the boat with Bama Boyd, who's 5'6", 160 pounds. And Wesley's a hell of a trout fisherman, by the way. But you think about every one of these players, and you've covered so many, but they've got that connection. And you know what that connection is? They worked their ass off for 4 or 5 years. They stuck it out no matter what happened, and they're part of something special. That's a lot of fun to get to cover that, isn't it? Rodney, are you there? Hopefully we didn't lose you. But I think every player remembers their time. And Rodney, jump back on when you can. But if you've got a painting by Daniel Moore, yeah, you're in pretty much royalty, Rodney. And that is the case with Roman Harper as we go back to the 2004, 2005, 2005 Tennessee Alabama game at the goal line. I think it was. And Rodney, just jump back on. We may be having some technical difficulties. And we're talking right now with Rodney Orr of Tider Insider, talking college football. Rodney, just like I say, jump on back in when you can. But college football, and we watch all these teams, and we see these players in their jerseys, and we know their numbers, but we always know their hometown. And I had this discussion with a friend of mine talking with a football coach at an SEC school recently. They're talking about a recruit that they wanted to get. And he said, well, what time do they usually eat dinner? What's his mom like? What's his family like? What's their favorite food? And he said, what do you mean? He goes, he always comes over here. He goes, that's right. You hadn't been to his house. Recruiting is going and eating whatever they serve and asking for seconds. But Rodney, we lost you there momentarily. You must have seen Mildred in a swimsuit. Paul Rodney was honking at me over there to Maplesville. But Rodney, Mildred in a swimsuit. I don't know if I can finish the show. Okay, let me get a straight face here. But Rodney, you think about all the players that you've had, even if you're on a losing season at Alabama or whatever school it is, Arkansas, Texas, whatever, you are connected to any and everyone who's ever worn that jersey from 1892 and beyond, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you mentioned the 2005 Florida game. And that was probably one of the more electric atmospheres I've ever seen, at Bryant-Denny Stadium. It was a great day. It was an incredible day. And Alabama played incredibly well. You mentioned Tyrone Prothro. He's a guy that I think doesn't really get the notoriety that he deserves. I think he's one of the great skill players, receivers, kick returners in Alabama football history. When you talk about David Palmer, you talk about Javier Arenas, as a kick returner. You talk about, Jalen Waddle. I mean, I think Tyrone Prothro is right there in that group. It's a shame that, what happened. And, he had 12 surgeries, Rob, after that injury. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I did not know that, no.
He had 12 surgeries to get that thing to where, it was, healed properly. But, the thing is the game, it was 31-3, and there was probably 7 minutes left in the game. Alabama faced a fourth down at around, the Florida 30. They didn't even have to go for it. They could have tried a field goal, but Shula decided to go for it on fourth down. And again, at that point, the game was, in all likelihood, barring a miracle, it was over for Florida. And so Prothro told me, I know after the game, Shula caught a lot of heat for having Prothro in the game at the time.
Yeah.
But I talked to Tyrone here a couple of years ago about that. And he said, it really wasn't Coach Shula's fault that he convinced Shula to allow him to go back in the game. And that's when the injury occurred on that fourth down play. So it's really unfortunate. It ended his career. And, he was a great player, Rob. And frankly, I think he would have been a Heisman candidate.
Yeah. Oh, he was a phenomenal player. And, you mentioned Roman Harper and those guys were there 01 to 05. Wesley Britt was there, I think, 2000, 2004. And, Alabama wasn't winning like they're winning now. But, man, tell you what, you're part of that. And I was with a bunch of Alabama people at our birthday party. My best friend from childhood, went to Alabama, and a bunch of Alabama. We were having a blast the other day. And you go back and you think about all these guys that have played. You remember Bob Baumhauer talking about,
absolutely.
He goes, life was great, man, in the mid-'70s playing at Alabama, winning national championships, playing for Coach Bryant. And, and you're dating Celia Ward, the cheerleader from Meridian, Mississippi, one of the most beautiful women in the history of beautiful women. Then he I'll tell you one thing about Bob Baumhauer. The Victory Bar and Grill there in Auburn, 72 TV sets. Several years ago, they were looking for a sponsor for the Auburn coaches shows. Well, Baumhauer comes up, says, I'll sponsor you, and writes the check. Pretty cool guy. You know him, but you ever notice when you're around those guys, the connection they have, even to guys that played 20 or 30 years after them? I mean, that's what you're so great about, and our mutual friend that is the historian, and I think about Keith Donovan, the historian for college football. And you're telling this story about Tyrone Prothro and so many other players, Richard Todd, all these guys that have laid the groundwork. In your opinion, in the last 25 years, we got a few minutes left, who are a couple of the most underrated, underappreciated football players to come through Alabama? Let's just say since you started Tider and Cider back in 1996.
Oh, wow. I mean, I don't know, Rob. There's so many guys that have come through that, I'd really have to rattle my brain. I mean, I'm sure I've got some guys that, I could think of that, maybe didn't get the publicity or the, whatever that they deserve, the accolades, whatever you want to call it. I mean, there's just been a lot of really, outstanding players, and, it's been the best teams are just that. They're teams. They're made up of individuals, but they're really teams. And you talk about that 2005 team, that was, Roman Harper was obviously a big member of that. Charlie Pepra, they had some great players on that team. And it was a team that, to me, I don't know if you said they overachieved. I thought Joe Kynes did a fabulous job, on that defensive side of the ball with some of the players that they had. And, so a lot of those guys are really, guys that I remember. D'Amico Ryans, I've got a great story on him. You don't have time for the stories, but it's, there was a lot of great players and during that time as well. And I don't think some of them are really recognized the way they should be.
Yeah. And that's what we do. And look, we're about out of time, but I want to say this is the May Veterinary Clinic in Tuscaloosa, Northport since 1960. They have Camp May dog and cat daycare facility, even have their own outdoor pool connecting cat condos. If you've got 3 or 4 cats, like the old lady down the street that has a bunch, they can all go to Camp May together, have connecting cat condos. May Veterinary Clinic. People come from far and wide since 1964. Waller and Guy May and the staff there, the other veterinarians and everybody there, they will take care of your pets like nobody else. May Veterinary Clinic. Rodney, also want to say, folks, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Never miss an opportunity to give back and help people out. You never know what kind words mean to people. And Rodney, before we go, it's kind of a laid back time of year, kind of the calm before the storm. But if there's any breaking news, get that out here, in the last couple of minutes, and then let people know how they can follow you. And again, we'll be back. We got another loaded show tomorrow, but this is Rodney Orr, Tider and Cider on the May Veterinary Clinic, Tider and Cider Tuesday Report.
No, I don't think right now there's anything necessarily. Of course, I've been in the car the last 30 minutes, so you never know. But I haven't heard anything that's necessarily breaking. I know that the top prospect announces tomorrow, DeMarcus Riddick out of Clanton. He's originally committed to Georgia. As a matter of fact, he still is, but expected to flip. I really thought he would probably end up at Alabama, but I think over the last couple of weeks, it's kind of becoming apparent that Auburn's in this really, really strong. Would not surprise me if that's what he announces tomorrow. But other than that, Rob, we're just a few weeks from within a couple of weeks of the start of August camp. So there'll be a lot of things here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, no interest there at all. I love it. Look, it's hot. It's really hot, which means it's perfect time to start football practice. Okay. All right, Rodney, let's do this again next week. Love it. You're one of the best people. Folks, tonight, Tider Insider TV, 6:30 p.m. Y'all got anything special in store?
You know what, Rob? I really don't know exactly what the plan is right now because we live this every day. And, So I just kind of show up and we run with it.
Y'all got it great. It's kind of like Austin City Limits. You just show up. Willie, put that guitar in your hand. Let's do it. Look, I'll be watching tonight. But anyway, Rodney and all of our listeners and our viewers, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter @Sidelines_live. Thanks for tuning in. We're out of here. We'll see you tomorrow.